Fourth and goal. They're going to snap it, and it's Trey Burton who throws, caught, goes, touchdown.
What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Phaithful Phanatics show. As always, I am your host, Dylan Davis, and today I'm joined by a very special guest. He is the host of the Farzetta show, which you can catch live from 6 to 7 a.m. Monday through Fridays. He is Mr. Marc Farzetta. Marc, what's going on, man? Thanks for coming on the show again.
My pleasure, Dylan. Great to be on with you again. Great to be on the show. What's going on with me? The Eagles just signed one of my favorite Temple players ever. So, I'm just happy. I am smitten. I am extremely happy that the Eagles not only addressed linebacker, but edge rusher, and also brought in a local product like Hassan Reddick. I am pretty happy. But, other than that, fair. Just fair.
The Eagles making you happy has got to be a new feeling for quite some time now. But you're also a fairly new father. How's fatherhood treating you?
Well, this is my second. I have a 2.5-year-old daughter, Emanuela, and then we just had Leonardo. And both my kids, despite being like very Italian names, do not look Italian. They look about as Italian as a bag of hammers. But anyway, it's great. Being the father of two now is definitely different, but still amazing. I like to describe early fatherhood to people as the greatest joy in life that a man can experience while having no fun. Like, none of it is fun. Like, it's not like I'm calling up my buddies like, next bachelor party, I know what we can do. Raise kids. Like, no one's saying that. But it's just amazing when you're changing like the poopiest diaper, yes, poopy, in the history of the planet. It's like, there's no place I'd rather be. It's amazing. I don't know what it is. It must be love for your kids or something.
There you go. All right, man. Yeah. Well, there's a lot going on in Philly sports, so that's what we're going to talk about today. We got some Phillies action, obviously, as the MLB lockout ended and free agency is upon us. The Eagles, like you said, have already made a move, and the legal tampering started around noon today. March Madness is here, and obviously the Sixers have started 6-1 with James Harden in the lineup. But I guess let's start with the Phillies and let's make our way up the expectation ladder, I guess you can call it. So, look, man, I'm confused. I'm not going to overreact like I've seen some people, but John Middleton is redefining his quote of spending stupid money as quite literally spending stupid money so far. They've had about 100 days to plan for the free agent market. And so far, well, obviously they brought in Brad Hand after this, but their first two moves were another reliever who has command issues and to bring back a fan favorite, as we know, Odubel Herrera. So what's your opinion on how free agency has started up with the Phillies? And obviously, like I said, they brought in a lefty reliever and Brad Hand earlier today.
I love the Brad Hand signing. Yeah. I mean, as many veteran arms as you can get in that bullpen, I'm fine with. Familia is not my favorite player in the world by any means, but he's a veteran arm. You see what you could get for him. I know some people don't want to pay $6 million for him or up to $7 million with incentives, but he's still a guy that he's trying to figure out his own stuff on the hill. I'd rather have that out there than just some young guy who has no experience. Right. So I like that idea. And Knebel, for instance, I want to give him that.
I love that move.
Yeah. So I think bullpen-wise, I'm okay with the moves that they've made so far, and Brad Hand is certainly the best part of all of that so far. As far as Odubel Herrera, this deal makes zero sense. Only if you really want to try to piss off anybody else in competition for your center fielder job. Yeah. Like guys that didn't take the job last year. Like I'd rather ride with Mickey Moniak and see what he can get. I'd rather see what Scott Kingery can continue to give you if you keep him in one spot. Matt Vierling, another guy. If you keep him in one spot, I'd rather see what those guys can do in the center field spot as opposed to just like, well, I guess we'll try Odubel again. Right. Like, spoiler alert, we've seen the movie. We know how it ends. The boat sinks, okay? This is not something that we want to see again. And this is what I'm waiting for. I am waiting for the moment where John Middleton blows us away and tells us this is going to be a completely different year. Where it's not going to be one of those years where towards the latter stages of the season, you start to get interested. Oh my, could they do it? They're going to do it. They could get first place. They're threatening for first place. And then they fall apart in September. That's something that Joe Girardi was charged to do.
Mhm.
Be the difference that a guy like Gabe Kapler couldn't be. And so far, he has not been that difference. The only way they're really going to change this team is if they continue to spend stupid money wisely, I'll put it like that, and bring in Chris Bryant, bring in Nick Castellanos, bring in Kyle Schwarber, bring in guys like that. They can really help this team continue the facelift that they need from the last decade of missing the playoffs.
Yeah, you mentioned the three names that are, the top of the Phillies market right now that they've been somewhat linked to, and it's not out of the realm of possibility. So I guess there's a lot of overreaction to the minimal signings that they've made so far, and obviously the Herrera signing. So you cannot fully react and complain about this roster until it's a finished product, which it's not yet. So what are your thoughts on those three names specifically? Who do you, Marc Farzetta, want to target the most, and who do you think they end up with?
I have had a man crush on Nick Castellanos and all the stuff he can do at the plate and in the field and all that for the longest time. I remember talking about him, years and years ago, and he was just a young pup, and Maikel Franco was learning his way at the hot corner for the Phillies. Oh, if he could just be like Nick Castellanos, then it'd be another story. But even with that said, the number one guy on my list, and with Nick Castellanos being second, but the number one guy is Chris Bryant.
Okay.
Chris Bryant can solve so many different problems, and he has the perfect mindset for a team like the Philadelphia Phillies, who have so many different problems when it comes to third base or it comes to center field. Chris Bryant's mindset is, wherever I got to play to win, man, let's go. That is exactly how you have success in Philadelphia. The hitting will come for Chris Bryant. It's going to be there. The glove will be there. But the mindset, not everybody is cut out for Philadelphia. My good friend Trey Thomas used to always tell me, not everybody is for Philadelphia, and Philadelphia ain't for everybody. And Chris Bryant just happens to be a guy that I think is very much for Philadelphia, and Philadelphia would be very much for him if he came here to tee up with some other Vegas guys like Bryce Harper and maybe Bryson Stott, who's going to be manning shortstop for the Phillies this season.
Well, you would hope so, and that's the biggest thing, right? Normally, when a guy has that much pull like Bryce Harper, most of the time they get what they want. And being that Chris Bryant's a free agent and not a sign and trade type of situation or a trade package, you would hope that Bryce can work some magic and bring in a buddy of his to help bolster this team and bolster the field. But you mentioned Bryson Stott. Didi Gregorius also had a great comment earlier that he might be asked to play third base. And you brought up Joe Girardi earlier. That's another problem with Joe Girardi. If I have to watch another season of Didi Gregorius constantly in the lineup night after night, I'm going to lose my mind, Mark. I am. So I'm just, at the end of the day, I'm just confused at the direction they're trying to go. This team, this organization, they have a depleted farm system. They spend, but they don't spend enough to contend. So they're basically viable, but you don't play to be viable when you go out and sign a league MVP, the best catcher in baseball, a Cy Young runner-up in Zach Wheeler. I have no idea what they're trying to do. So at the end of the day, fast forward a couple of weeks, what do you think how contenderish do you view this team as? If
I think that they end up getting one of the big names that's out there. I don't know how they make it work, but I think they make it work because I think John Middleton understands that a lot is at stake this year. If you're possibly if you're not going to bring in one of those guys and you don't have a successful year, Joe Girardi's gone. You're on to yet.
And what is Dombrowski here for?
Yeah, Dombrowski is here for hopefully just spending the money that John Middleton allows him to pay. So that's what he's here for. But you're on to yet another manager since Charlie Manuel. You keep on hitting that revolving door. So right now, I think it's up to this Phillies team to go out there and get one of those names. You do that, you make the playoffs, especially that the playoffs have become, 34, 35% of the teams are going to make the playoffs, if not more than that this year. So for me, I don't like the playoff expansion, but yes, they will be a playoff team if they go out and they make one of those major moves. And that, you have to say the cliche thing, if they stay healthy, that's what happens. But if they don't do that, then why should I believe they're going to have anything different than the years that we have seen over the last 10 years, where even if they're in it towards the end of the season, they fall apart in September. And we've seen that movie before, as I've said. Why should I believe it was going to be anything different if they haven't made any bigger changes?
I'm with you. They need one of the big names. I do ultimately believe they grab one of those big names. I don't think it's Schwarber anymore. I had belief it would have been pre-lockout. The fact that the universal DH is now in the NL, I feel like a team's going to load up with a contract for Kyle Schwarber. So
yeah, there is one reason. This is me being a fan more than it is anything close to an analyst. But there was something special that happened last year with this team. And yes, they still missed the playoffs, but Rhys Hoskins missing the last month and a half of the season, I think was exactly what this team needed for the future. Meaning Bryce Harper, obviously $330 million man. It's hard to argue against the idea that this wasn't his team the minute he stepped in here. But even a guy like Alex Rodriguez, who came to New York, still had to take the team away or tried to take the team away from Derek Jeter. Derek Jeter wouldn't even give him the reins of the team officially. And when it comes to Hoskins and Harper, it's not at all the same thing, but in a way there's a similarity in that as the incoming guy, you don't want to be the guy to be like, all right, this is my team immediately. There's got to be a gradual change of power. And Rhys Hoskins missing the last month and a half of the season, and then Bryce Harper coming in and then cementing his MVP status, I think was the official changing of the guard between this being Rhys Hoskins' team, who came up with a lot of guys on this roster, including guys on the coaching staff like Dusty Wathan. And then I think this became Bryce Harper's team officially through the end of last year. So that's something that I think needed to happen, kind of a chemistry change in the clubhouse, if you will, for this team to maybe have a real shot at success this year.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I hope so. I've been kind of pushing that train too. Like at the end of every year, everyone's like, oh, they're not going to do it. They're not going to do it. And I buy in and I think that they can do it. And obviously we know how that movie ends, as you said, but like that was a big step forward. Alec Boehm's going to be a piece that hopefully can step back this year. Obviously you mentioned Bryson Stott earlier. Who knows how much he plays, but they got some work to do. We'll see what the roster and the lineup looks like by the time opening day comes around. They have starting pitching issues as well. I don't know who's the fourth and fifth. Zach Eflin's still hurt. Zach Wheeler's banged up. So it'll be interesting. All right, let's move on to the Eagles as we open up today's show, stating the Eagles have made a splash, so to speak, signing edge rusher Hassan Reddick to a 3-year, $45 million a year contract, $30 million guaranteed. Thoughts on the Reddick signing?
Love it. I absolutely love it. Extreme versatility. And usually when you have versatility like him, you're kind of okay at two things. This guy's great at one thing and really good at another. He's great at attacking the quarterback and getting after him as an edge rusher. Then he's really good at dropping back into coverage. And I laugh at this, but one thing we always talked about last year with Jonathan Gannon and his scheme. What is his scheme? He said he doesn't have his scheme, but what's his philosophy? Well, his overall philosophy is you got to be able to do a lot of different things. And a guy like Hassan Reddick is one of those guys that can do a lot of different things. But the two best things that he does is one, attack the quarterback, the other, drop back into coverage. He does, at 27 years old now, he does what he has been doing throughout his career. If he's able to do that here, if Jonathan Gannon is able to put him in the right place to have success, if he abuses his talents properly, you're looking at a Pro Bowl year from this guy. That's what he can bring to the table here in Philadelphia. Plus, if you continue to invest in your defensive line, if Fletcher Cox doesn't go anywhere, and you continue to have guys maybe get to the quarterback on the D line, he can be one of them to either help that cause or one to lead that cause. So this is a great signing. It not only adds value to your edge rushing spot, but it also adds value, believe it or not, to your linebacking core, which is something that I have never said over the last 20 years since Jeremiah Trotter was playing here in Philadelphia. Value to their linebacking core. That's a good amount of money that the Eagles have put up in that position. So I love it. I think it's a great deal. I applaud Howie Roseman for the, I guess, first big splash, if you will, of the tampering period. This is exactly that. I love this move.
No, and you mentioned the money. Like, yes, they invested good money into the linebacker position, which they haven't done in the past, but it's still a team-friendly type of deal. It's not a ton for a top 4 pass rusher over the last 2 seasons.
It was one of those deals where I was looking at my phone and I just kept staring at it. I was waiting to see the thing I missed. Like it wasn't like, I think, who was it? Mike Garafalo of NFL Network. I was waiting for it to be like Mikey Garafalo, like a fake account. And I'm like, why is this guy on here? But it wasn't. It's real. It's very real. A Temple Owl is going to be helping patrol the backfield, if you will, for the Philadelphia Eagles defense.
Mark is the Temple man himself, so he's happy that he's home. And it's just going to fit. And you also mentioned Jonathan Gannon and the scheme, and there's a lot of people on social media and on Twitter right now stating the fact that, hey, Gannon might have had his fingerprints on this one in terms of scheme and the role that they're going to draw up for Hassan Reddick. So I love it. Obviously looking forward to the draft with 3 first-round picks. A lot of eyes went edge rusher, linebacker. Do you expect that? Like, if you're the Eagles, do you double down and go and still draft and Ajabo if he's there, or another linebacker like a Devin Lloyd if he's there? So what do you think they're going to do come draft time now?
I think the Eagles are guaranteed to do 2 things. I think two things are going to be guaranteed with the first 3 picks that they have in this draft. One is take a defensive player, probably defensive line, most likely. The other is trade it to next year. I don't think they go get Deshaun Watson. I don't think they do anything sexy, if you will, out there in free agency or trade when it comes to bringing in a quarterback. They'll probably take a flyer on a guy later in the draft and maybe even bring in a veteran as training camp approaches. But I think 2 things are guaranteed. One, they take a defensive lineman early on in this draft. The second is that they trade one of these picks to next year so that next year you have at least 2 first-round picks in case Jalen Hurts, wait for it, isn't the guy. And then
you're not allowed to say that, Mark.
Yeah, I know, right? Yeah. In case he's not, yeah. I love this. Howie Roseman. Oh, yeah. We're focused on Jalen Hurts. Nothing's changed. Jalen Hurts is our guy. Yeah, didn't it like 24 hours ago you tried to trade for, who was it, Russell Wilson? Yeah. And Russell Wilson was like, nah, bro, I'm good. And then went to Denver. So, yeah, okay. I take that with a grain of salt. But when it comes to Jalen Hurts right now, if he's not the guy, then you have a little bit of an insurance policy. You hedged your bets, if you will, by having at least 2 first-round picks in next year's draft to maybe get somebody better in what might be and what should be is expected to be a better quarterback class.
So if they trade 1, let's say they trade 16, let's say 15 they take in Ajabo if he's there or whatever it is. If they trade 16 at 19, do you see a corner in the making?
I see a corner or I see a wide receiver. If they don't get Juju Smith
or
Schuster, then they could go out there and probably bring somebody in through the draft.
Well, that was going to be my next question. So follow up before we move on. Multiple wide receivers out there in free agency still. Obviously, I think Allen Robinson's going to come with a hefty price tag. So he's probably off the list now. Jarvis Landry, not sure what the price tag on him will be, but DJ Chark and Juju Smith-Schuster seem to be the 2 most reasonable names. Do you see the Eagles bringing either one of those in? I remember like a year and a half ago, there was a report that Howie tried to bring Juju Smith-Schuster here. Yeah. So what's the likelihood of one of those 2 coming here?
Juju, I think, better than anybody else. And I would love that idea. He is a younger but still veteran wide receiver that can mesh well with the guys that are already here on this roster.
Just
like
keep him off TikTok.
Yeah, right. Keep him off TikTok. And then this name actually intrigues me a little bit, despite the numbers being down. Jarvis Landry. Okay. If this, I mean, talk about a guy that wants to be a mentor, and obviously it didn't work out with Odell Beckham Jr. out there in Cleveland with the Browns. But if Jarvis Landry comes here, I would love for him to be the guy that has his arm around a player like Devontae Smith or Quez Watkins or those guys, because he wants to be in that leadership role, and he's a good enough veteran wide receiver to lead this team. I remember watching him on Hard Knocks, and everyone always talked about, the blessing. Oh, bless him. You got bless. Forget that. What he said to the wide receivers room was something that stuck with me, which was forget about being injured. Like, this is your chance to prove how special you are. Get out there, fight through pain, and be great, because somebody else is going to be sacrificing for this team. And if they're doing that, you better match that same energy. And that's the type of guy I want in the locker room, in the wide receivers room, with young, impressionable minds like the Eagles have in that room.
You don't think Juju wants to go back to Pittsburgh and play with Mr. Trubisky?
I wouldn't be surprised if Juju was already running across the state to try to come here and just give Jalen Hurts an opportunity.
Jaguars are giving former Cardinals wide receiver Christian Kirk a 4-year deal worth up to $84 million.
Pots and pans. Wow. Yeah.
Well, hopefully that doesn't set the market for the wide receiver room. So we'll see. All right, let's move on. A couple minutes left here with you, Mark. Don't want to keep you too long. Let's get to the head of the room, and that being the 76ers. Loaded question. What's your assessment as of late? Like, it's looked beautiful, as you know, we've seen them roll Minnesota and New York the first time around, and they beat up on the Bulls. It's looked ugly. Obviously, the slow starts, they've had to come from behind, down 12, 15, 20, etc. We know how the Brooklyn game played out. But at the end of the day, they're 6-1 with James Harden in the lineup. So what's your assessment of how this has played out so far?
Well, I'll say this. Before the last 2 games happened, I felt that this Sixers team had the best chance to win a championship since the 80 Dr. J 76ers. Okay. Like, I never thought Allen Iverson was going to get past the Lakers and Kobe and Shaq. Like, I never thought that was going to happen. But after these last 2 games, I still feel like this team has the best chance to win a championship. It was a horrible game against the Nets. And what caught my attention more was that they needed overtime last night against the Orlando Magic to win that game. And they needed Joel Embiid to log 41 minutes before returning home for a back-to-back to play against the MVP, reigning MVP, Nikola Jokic. So I don't feel great about those two games, but I'm more worried the fact that they played the same way against the Magic that they did against the Nets, except they actually came out with a win. But it bothers me when James Harden addresses the media after the game and he says, well, that sucked. We were terrible. We needed to get our ass kicked. And now let's get our you-know-what together and go out there and play better. Well, a couple days later, they go to Orlando, and they put out the same effort, but this time they actually win because they played such an inferior opponent. James Harden struggled. James Harden was afraid to shoot that shot at the beginning of the fourth quarter from the top of the key that he deferred to George Niang. That was insane to me. I expected him to go through periods of struggling while he was here. I didn't expect him to be afraid to shoot. So that was worrisome. But with that being said, I think they will figure this out as the season goes on. They got, 15, 16 more games left. Yeah. I think they'll figure it out over this time, and I think ultimately James Harden and Joel Embiid will lead this team to an Eastern Conference final.
So you're telling me 2 bad games doesn't mean that their season's cooked?
It means that the Sixers should fold as a franchise, and we should just not have basketball.
We should trade.
We should take the all-stars of the Big Five, and they should just be our professional basketball team.
Can you point your finger to what it is right now? Because if you look at the 2 games, obviously Twitter loves to blame Doc Rivers, and Doc is far from perfect. And whatever the hell the last play call at the end of intermission or regulation was last night, couldn't tell you.
Yeah. Well, it was an ISO to Joel Embiid, and he immediately got doubled. And then the safety valve was Tyrese Maxey.
45 feet away. But,
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But they're like, if you look at Harden and Embiid, they're just not shooting well. And no one shot well against Brooklyn. Last night, Tobias obviously showed up. Maxey's kind of shrunk a little bit. But Joel and Harden are just not shooting well. Can that just be it? Like, forget everything. Forget chemistry. Forget, not showing up. They're just not shooting the ball well at all. James Harden specifically. Mm-hmm. So what can you, pinpoint as the main issue?
Well, it's funny. It's like in baseball. You talk about guys hitting or guys pitching. They do their job. The manager looks brilliant. They don't hit shots in basketball. The manager looks stupid, or the coach in this case looks stupid. James Harden struggling mightily has been what has hurt the Sixers over the last 2 games. Joel Embiid got 27 points against the Brooklyn Nets, and it felt like the quietest.
5-17.
Right, exactly. And I know everyone says he gets fouled, he goes to the line. That's where he gets a lot of his points, and that's fine. But against the Nets in a statement game that some fans paid $4,000 to $5,000 for a seat, you got to show up. Everyone's got to show up. And if your coaches are going to get the guys ready, your MVP's got to get the guys ready, and that's Joel Embiid. He was the best player on the floor for the Sixers that night, bar none. But that was not a high bar he needed to get to. So I look at Joel Embiid, I look at James Harden. They need to improve. There's nothing Doc Rivers is going to do to Joel Embiid or James Harden to just make them snap into it, especially James Harden, where he's not going to shoot 3 for 15 from the floor like he did against the Nets, for instance. That's got to be up to James Harden. He's a 32-year-old former MVP, veteran player. He needs to know what's going to get him ready to play in those games. And right now, if he's just going to struggle, then you just got to sit through it and grit and bear it. Hopefully, in this game tonight against the Denver Nuggets, he flips that switch.
Yeah, I hope so. I hope he plays, considering I bought tickets 2 weeks ago, not realizing it was the second half of a back-to-back.
Right. Well, it looks like Embiid and Harden are going to play tonight. They weren't on the injury report.
I have seen Joel Embiid be scratched about 20 seconds before the tip-off before. So,
right.
All right. Real quick, if I had to ask you for one X factor, I guess you can include Harden with how bad he's been. But let's say outside of Harden and Embiid, one X factor for the Sixers to make a championship run. Tyrese Maxey, Tobias Harris, Matisse Thybulle, Doc Rivers. What would you point to?
How many X's am I getting?
One.
I'm going to tell you right now. I mean, I think the X factor really would have to be Tobias Harris, and I think that would be why last night's game was important. Because you saw James Harden struggle so much. Tyrese Maxey hit a big 3 for you late in that game, but the guy that was consistent throughout, really from jump, was Tobias Harris. Yeah. So everyone has already pushed him aside like he's not here anymore. There's already the reports that the Sixers won't bring him back after this year. They'll trade him and try to bring somebody else in. James Harden takes less money to attract somebody in like Bradley Beal, whatever it might be. But Tyrese Maxey, I think we know what he is, at least for the rest of his sophomore season. But Tobias Harris has been so streaky. I think the month of January, whatever it was a month stretch in the new year where he was averaging about 22 points per game. It was right after he was booed. He was averaging about 22 points per game. Then he got a 26-point performance from him last night, game-winning 3 in the corner. That was great. That was awesome. If you get more of that, and not necessarily 26 points or anything, maybe 15, 20, exactly. then that's the X factor, because he can do so many other things on the court that Maxey can't. He can rebound for you. He can D up a little bit better. He gives you that offense, that little extra sugar with it. Then I think you're ready to go right there. Maxey, yes, get back to what he was doing when they were averaging what they score, like 127 points in the first 3 games together. That was incredible. So that, for me, is what I want to see from this team going forward, and especially Tobias Harris.
Yeah, just a cold shooting streak as of right now for the team.
Oh, and George Niang. The man.
Big time. The minivan.
Just hitting threes, baby.
The minivan showing up. All right, last Sixers question, because I know I got to get you out of here.
Yes.
Obviously, last year, seeding was a big thing here in Philly. They were chasing the 1 seed. They ultimately got the number 1 seed. We know how that ended. How important is seeding to you this year? And I don't mean getting beating out Miami for the 1 seed. I mean with how loaded the Eastern Conference is, and that if you end up with the 1, 2, or 3 seed, you could see the Brooklyn Nets or the Boston Celtics in round 1. How important is that for you right now?
I would love to see the Celtics in round 1.
Oh.
I would. The Nets, I don't like using the term scared, but the Nets, I think, is a better, more dramatic series in round 2. And I'd rather get them a couple of more games into the playoffs.
Mark's looking for the storyline.
And I pretty much am. I mean, that just happens with me. I look for the drama. But I would love to beat the Celtics. I always enjoy beating the Celtics. The Nets rivalry thing is a fairly new thing here in Philadelphia, but KD there, Kyrie probably playing in those games, and then obviously Ben Simmons and that whole thing. For me, I'm looking at that in the second round, because if they beat the Nets in the second round to finally get to an Eastern Conference final for the first time since the days of Allen Iverson, that'll be something we'll talk about for a long time. So I would love to see the Celtics first round, knock them out, see you later, and then hopefully get by the Nets in 6 or 7 games in the second round.
Yeah, and then let's take on the Greek Freak in the Eastern Conference Finals.
Yeah.
Let's just roll through the best of the best to win this championship this year.
Hell yeah.
It'll definitely be interesting if that's how it plays out. But all right, Mark, thank you so much for coming on again. Guys, check him out at Marc Farzetta if you don't already. I'm sure you do on Twitter. He's the host of the Farzy Show. Real quick, I don't know if you filled out a bracket yet. Do you have a winner for March Madness?
I do. I went with Gonzaga. Gonzaga, I picked
finally. Wow. Okay.
I went to Gonzaga. I went with Gonzaga last year. They made it to the championship. Baylor just became men against boys, basically. Timmy getting another shot at it. Holmgren, who's projected to be a top 3 pick in the draft coming up. I like those too. I like the bad taste in the mouth of Gonzaga. Another storyline for you. But I like how I think they'll march back to the championship this year and this year win it.
I know you're a Temple man. Do you root for Nova in the tournament?
Okay, so this is the splitting hairs, and for a bald man, that's difficult. I realize that. But I never root for any other Big 5 team.
Okay.
I pull for them. Understand what I'm saying? Like, I'd be happy. Like, Colin Gillespie and I are both Archbishop Wood Vikings. I graduated maybe a couple of years before he did. But I pull for him. I'll root for him. But Villanova overall, like, if Villanova wins, my reaction is, oh, good, they won. But that's it. I never go, yeah, they Villanova. I never run out into Broad Street or anything like that for Villanova. It's not my school. But as a Temple student and a Temple alum, when I went to Temple, I hated Villanova. I hated all the other Big 5 schools. I covered the Goon Gate game with Nehemiah Ingram and John Bryant. Like, I was a student writer at that game. But I don't actively root for any other team other than Temple. But if another Big 5 team does well, and getting to know the coaches over the years and the brotherhood of the Big 5, like today was Coaches versus Cancer in Philadelphia. So I think they do tremendous work in the city. It's bigger than the game of basketball. And if it's bigger than the game of basketball in Philadelphia, then they will certainly have at least my smile if they actually do something right.
See that, guys? It's all about the drama. It's all about the storyline.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Mark, thank you so much for coming on, man.
Dylan, an absolute pleasure. Thank you to you and your audience, my friend.
Thank you, buddy. Have a good one.
You as well.
All right, guys. Marc Farzetta of the Farzy Show. Thanks to him so much for coming back on again. That's going to wrap up this, what's today? Monday edition of the Phaithful Phanatics Show. As always, I am one half of your host, Dylan Davis. You can find me on Twitter at DylanJD98. Of course, my co-host Gint dealing with some work stuff, so he was not able to be here today. But guys, as always, we stream to you live through DSM Media on our Twitch, Twitter, YouTube, and Facebook channel. If you are new to DSM Media and or the Phaithful Phanatics Show, head on over to at DSM_media on Twitter. You can find the link tree in our bio to take you to every social media platform that we are on. We're on TikTok. We're on Instagram. We're on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, so wherever you get your sports content, wherever you get your content in general, check us out there. We're constantly doing giveaways. I got one I got to ship out soon this week to one of our TikTok winners. And of course, we are also proudly brought to you by our friends over at Manscaped. So head on over to manscaped.com at checkout. Use our promo code DSM, as you can see below me on my screen, for 20% off and free shipping. Again, manscaped.com, code DSM, all caps, 20% off and free worldwide shipping. That's going to do it for me. I got a Sixers game to get to with my boy Scotty. You guys have a great night and go Sixers.